Welcome to Lifting Your Spirit, a monthly broadcast in which we interview people about their spiritual lives and how they have shared that journey with others. I'm Reverend Joel Grossman, interfaith minister, director of spiritual services for Constellation Hospice here in Newburyport, and I offer spiritual coaching virtually on a donation basis.
And I'm Ted Jones, a meditation teacher at North Shore Insight Meditation Center.
Our show is based on the following four principles. Number one, everyone is spiritual. Sometimes we are conscious and active regarding our spirituality, sometimes not, but even when we're not, we still have a spirit.
Second, there are many ways to lift your spirit, not just through traditional religious practices, but also through nature, art, human relationships, and service to others, just to name a few.
3, each person's spiritual path is unique and may change in small or large ways over time.
And fourth, it's important to respect your own spiritual journey, trusting that one step leads to another, and also to respect other people's unique spiritual journeys, regardless of how different it may be from their own. We're not here to convince you of the benefits of any particular approach or path, but rather just to offer you some food for thought.
So I'm very happy to introduce you and have as our guest today Reverend Deborah Hogan, an interfaith clergywoman and longtime acquaintance. Deborah established the Amethyst Light Ministry in 1997, which is a unique operating spiritual support path, independent of any spiritual, specific church or religious organization. Deborah has helped many people in their spiritual lives and organizations, churches like Unity on the River and in seminaries like Chaplaincy Institute of Maine, an interfaith seminary which I helped start and I'm on faculty of. So thank you for being here, Deborah.
Thank you for welcoming and inviting me.
Sure. And we always start with asking our guests to share about their spiritual journey through life. So if you
should we start with the fact that I had much angst when you asked me for a 1 or 2 paragraph bio. I didn't know how to fit it in that. I think that most clergy people, at least who I know, and therapists, had what may today be called a dysfunctional family. It didn't quite run with all the love that we would like it to run with, in the way that we would see that. And that was my beginning. And I can think of so many, I call them the forks in the road, where I went one way rather than another, that have built up my spiritual muscle. I was in, my first step was a emotionally abusive marriage at 19. So once I left that, then another pathway opened for me. And I have a wonderful son who's now 45. I can't even stand saying that, but he's 45. And from that marriage. It was really painful because emotional abuse is hidden. You don't have anything to show for it. So a lot of people don't believe you once you start speaking of it. So that was a very challenging moment in my life to move through in a positive way. I think the next step would have been being in geriatric health care. I had a friend who was a nurse, and this nursing home and facility in Andover needed a new clerk on the floor, and I interviewed and got the job. From there, I fell in love with geriatrics. I became one of the 5 managers that helped the admin. I was sort of a little bit in every major place. I was the first face that everyone saw when they came in. And I sat with the dying and hospice came in, so I started doing hospice work. I did hospice training. And then one day I heard, you're supposed to leave that now and open an art gallery. I had taken a week off. I had painted the whole week. I didn't know where the gallery was to be. I just took a week off to let it all simmer. And I looked out my window. I had a condo on the 5th floor in Haverhill, Mass, right off of Washington Street. And there I saw a man put up a for rent sign that day. And I went and leased it and trusted. I left my job. I opened what I thought was an art gallery, which turned into a healing center immediately. It was amazing, the people that came in, the work that was accomplished. At that time, I became a Reiki master healer. I became a lot of things, and a lot of other gifts came out for me to see them. I had people coming in every day for healing. So the art piece got a little smaller and the healing piece got a little bigger. What started as a little tiny curtained off space in the back of this 1,000 square foot space took over the whole space. Meditation nights, guest speakers, everything that may come under a mystical life. From there, I was told to close the art gallery 4 years later. And I was told to do that because one day, I'm a single parent, I didn't have enough money in my bank account to pay the rent. And I had made a deal with God that if I couldn't pay the rent, I wouldn't continue anymore. And I couldn't pay the rent that day. And I didn't know where it was going to come from. So I called my landlord and said, I have to go. And they were willing to work something out. I said, no. I made a deal with God that said if I didn't have the rent, I would leave. So I'm leaving. It broke my heart. I remember clearing out the art gallery, going home, and just weeping and grieving. My heart ached. I didn't realize that was an opening. At that time, I thought it was just grief and pain and negative. And the following week, I got a call from the now department of the bank that told me they had made an error and such amount of money was in my account. I started working out of my home, and everything grew from there. Within a few years, we moved to Newburyport, and a lot of my growth happened there. I became ordained in 1997, but I opened the gallery in 92, so it really began back there, but I hadn't given it a name yet till 1997. And everything opened in a way that was totally unexpected. And I was thinking this morning on the way here how every single person, every single experience in our lives makes us who we are in this moment. Doesn't matter if it's negative or positive. It allows us to become who we are in this very, very moment. And I'd known that years before when I was doing healing work with my family. I knew that intellectually, but something about coming here today has sort of transformed it into something larger. And knowing that and owning that and being so grateful for every single moment I've ever had, whether I felt walked over or seen, ignored or adored. Every single moment has makes us who we are in this very moment. And then to me, the question is, what are we going to do with it? There's so many forks in the road. There's so many moments. One of the big moments for me is when people say to me, oh, well, are you a Christian? I can still feel every time someone's asked me that. And the thing is, everyone defines that differently, right? Someone only defines you're a Christian if you believe Jesus is your Savior. They only define if you're a Christian if you've done this or that. And I define it because Jesus is so important in my life that I define it as following his path. I define it as being the kindest, most tolerant, most loving, faithful person I can be at any moment. And each day to me is a day for me to flex my faith muscle, I call it. I don't think we have to wait for any special event or community or day or celebration. Every day on this earth gives us moments to flex our faith muscle and expand our awareness and our consciousness, which for me is what it's about.
I'm curious about growing up,
Yes.
whether you grew up with any religious training from your family, or and sort of how that all evolved, and particularly reaching the point where clearly energy became very prominent as a Reiki practitioner, and where did that thread started?
I really have very little religious training. I say that right up front. I believe I came in here like this. And I believe that all of it's just been an uncovering of it. And that doesn't mean better than or anything else. It just means maybe I've lived enough lives that I brought it with me.
So your parents didn't go to church?
So, brought up in North Andover on the West Boxford line. The little Congregationalist church there was the church. My church experience was this. We would go, my mother was an alcoholic, and we would go Sunday mornings because my father was on the board. He was a bank president, and he we're going to look good here. And he always fell asleep in church. And my father was a snorer. He would snore so loud. My job, because little Debbie sat between mom and dad, was to knock him with my elbow to wake him up.
Wow.
I still remember the minister. His name was Don Rosenberg. And I still remember Don. And he did make an impact on me, even as a little child. Not remembering words, but his enthusiasm made an impact on me. And his firmness in what he believed and how he presented it made an impact on me at a level that I'm unaware of. I mean, I can know that it happened, but I'm not in touch with that level. But it feels like it was seeding. It was seeding. And how else can I answer your question? What else happened? What's the connection? Really great mentors, really awesome opportunities. I did do studying with Unity. I went to Kansas City and took courses and did things like that. I never completed it.
Maybe it'd be helpful for me, and I think our viewers, that Unity is a church.
Unity on the
Unity
on the River, and there still is one. They still meet Sundays in Newburyport at the synagogue. But
it's national in scope?
Yes, worldwide in scope.
Worldwide in scope.
Along with Science of Mind. So both of them were founded in the 1800s under the umbrella of what we call New Thought. So New Thought, along with, help me with this, Divine Science, it's not there, Divine Science and, what's her name? The house is in Amesbury, the church is in Boston. Help me, gentlemen.
Quaker?
Christian Science?
Christian
Yes,
Science.
right.
All of that was under the umbrella of New Thought, where the thoughts that we believe create
Yes.
that we can manifest, which I don't think we do. I think what we do is we just call everything forward. It's already manifested because I can't manifest diddly-do. But I can pray hard enough and believe hard enough and know enough that what I wish to receive can come to me. It's already been created, right? 7 days, it's already done. We don't have to knock our heads against a brick wall and create anything more. We just have to believe enough in order to receive it into our 3D linear world here. So New Thought, yes, it is worldwide. You can look up Unity. It has beautiful prayer lines you can call and have prayer received. Science of Mind also, which are called, I think, spiritual centers of some kind right now. So I've served both those congregations as interim and guest speaker. When I was on staff at Unity on the River, I was not on staff as a minister. I was on staff as head of the volunteers. I was a guest speaker frequently, and Reverend Shipley Allenson, the founding minister of Unity on the River, is a dear friend and a mentor, my mentor to me. Can I tell a funny story about that? I know you
Sure.
want more linear information. Just give me a second.
I just have to rein myself in because I'm very non-linear generally, but
Well, I'm totally non-linear, so for you to get linear. Plus, we're sitting right across from each other. On my astrological chart even shows that usually I don't sit directly across from somebody because your energy field comes on me and leaves an imprint. So I take it in. And we might be colliding over all the doo-doo here in front of us, but we're here.
right, yes.
It's good to collide on doo-doo.
Yeah, there's a lot of electromagnetic
It's good. A lot of
stuff going
stuff
on
is
in here.
happening. So the story I wanted to tell about Shipley being my wonderful mentor, because my hope is that many people who know her will hear this story, if they haven't already read my book, because it's in my book. My book, I get to show you my book. Here's the book. It's called Mystical Partnership, Extraordinary Experiences of an Ordinary Life. You can purchase it anywhere. Yes, Sue had it at Jabberwocky. She might be able to get you more. She's been very supportive. And you can get it on Amazon, online, any bookstore can order it for you. Thank you. I have a few too if you want to get in touch with me. So Shipley, when we first started over in Amesbury, she moved from Newburyport and went over to Amesbury. When she first moved there, a few of us volunteered to help make the first Christmas season big. And I was the one who volunteered to do the advertising because I already did advertising for my own ministry here. And I had a relationship with the department of the Newburyport Daily News when it was still small, Newburyport Daily News. Great. And I like to design and art, so I designed the ad and put in all the dates, made it pretty to go on the church page that traditionally used to be there.
Yes.
So I went in and handed it off to the person who I've known for years and went back and forth, and I so looked forward to it. I was so proud of doing something. Now, that will be the lesson. You'll hear the lesson of doing something for Unity on the River and something for Shipley because she was really out there, and here I was in my little container, and here she was, and I was so proud of myself. So the day it was supposed to come out, which I think was always Thursday for some reason before the Sunday, and it had the page with all the church stuff going on, and when it was Christmas time, it was really big because they all have different services, Christmas Eve, candle lighting, all of it was on the church page. So I went and got the paper, and I opened it up, and it wasn't anywhere on the church page. And I was astounded. You know where they had it? On the movie page next to 10 Strip Club in Salisbury Beach.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I took the paper, appalled as I was. I was brought up as a very good WASP, by the way, a very good functional, don't talk about much, hold in your emotions. I did it very well. And I went in to see Shipley in her office, and I opened it up. I told her what happened, and I opened it up, and she went, they need to come here too. And then just went off to do her thing. It was one of the best lessons or experiences. Talk about detachment, talk about non-anger, talk about acceptance, talk about, they need us too.
That's great.
And I'm sure it showed up. I'm sure it showed up better on the movie strip club page than it did on the church page because it was a standout.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I was not in charge of that. Someone else was. Okay. Yes. Your questions. You have another question?
Well, I
Joel's turn. This could go on for a while. I know we only have. Okay.
So earlier when we were talking, you mentioned Irish and Jewish. Where's the Jewish come in?
My mother's, my grandmother's maiden name is Herzog. My mother always had a menorah, which I still have on the baby grand piano in the living room. Never talked about, never any intention. When she taught Sunday school for my class when I was a youngster, my mother made sure we all went a few times to, in Haverhill, to the synagogue and met the rabbi there and got talked to about that. After the process of her leaving her body and transitioning, I was like, this is so interesting. And I did some Ancestry.com work. And when they came over in the 1800s, my grandmother, who was Bertha. She had a brother, Carl. She had a sister, Minnie, and a lot of other aesthetic things. And I went back far enough to realize that it is definitely a Jewish name. And I even had been called, "Are you Jewish?" many times growing up. In my job at the nursing home, the owners were Jewish, very Jewish. And I would, but I would talk to them. I was head of all the guest services. So whenever there was a function of any kind, whether it was Christian or Jewish, I was ahead of seeing that everyone had what they needed. And Judy, I talked to her one day and I said, "I really think that it's time for me to come over to the other side. I really think I'm ready." And she went, "Oh, don't do that. There's too many rules." And that was the end of that conversation. But I've always been one who looked for the truth in everything. So I believe, in answer to your question, that there are definitely Jewish roots. And that's the reason why they left Germany. Yeah.
So just getting into a little more nonlinear territory, the energy, working with energy in Reiki, I mean, at what point did that become a sort of attraction for you?
It's a good question. I don't know when it was an attraction. All I ever knew was energy. All I've ever known is feeling something. I'm also an HSP, which stands for highly sensitive person, which doesn't mean we're oversensitive. It means we're quite aware. And so I've always been aware of how people felt before I went into the room, or how someone was feeling, or how to be compassionate. It was just kind of my nature. How did I That's interesting. I think I just saw an ad. I was in my gallery and I saw an ad that this person, John Harvey Gray, who left his body a few years ago but was the eldest living Reiki master in the world, was holding a class in New Hampshire. And one of those moments when I just go, okay. And I went. And I had several different, I had one of his students for other classes, and then I did my Reiki Master with someone else. But from the moment I did it, when you take Reiki Level 1, and as I teach it, because I teach in the purity of it, I try not to change it, that's only for the individual. You're not supposed to work on other people. I bought my table the next day and started seeing clients. I went against it, and it's never failed. All of that, and whether we call it Reiki, we call it faith, whatever we call it, I know it works.
So it wasn't so much a awakening to something new as something that had always been there.
I believe
Reiki
it's
was just kind
always
of a fit for you to
I believe so.
bring that
I
forward.
believe so.
Beautiful.
And it allowed me a certification to do what felt natural to me too.
So for our audience, if you could say what Reiki is for those who don't know Reiki.
It's an ancient way of healing through hands and having the energy. Some people believe the energy pours through you from the heavens, from God, and enters into someone else's body. Other people believe that the God in someone is pulling the God in you into them. And so there's a couple of different ways to look at it. I am the person who likes labels the least. Labels to me only separate us. If you're hugging your child, you're doing healing work. If you're hugging and touching someone with love, you're doing healing work. Reiki is beautiful. All the students that I've ever taught, we have beautiful classes, beautiful moments, and I know it's made a huge difference in their lives. I no longer teach. I'm asked to. It just isn't something that I'm called to do any longer, and hasn't been for about almost 10 years. I did one more class, or 2 more classes when I moved to Townsend, but no more. I think there comes a time when we just embody it all and we're just it. Okay, yeah. Okay. I mean, when you personally practice your meditation, not teaching it, it's just something that's innate in you at this point in your life, right?
Yes,
It's just
that's
innate.
true. Yeah.
You could sit in this room and leave right now. Go ahead, close your eyes. You could just be centered and in that place within you that allows you to be aware of the more. I always say to people, I'm always interested in the other. There's always other. There's another way to see something. There's another perception. There's another way to know. There's a million ways to know God or creator energy or goddess. I don't care what people call it. I'm a God person. I tell people right away, it doesn't matter to me what you call it. What matters to me is that it empowers you and that you feel positive about it. If it makes you feel less than, that's not on my map. I want it to be something that you turn to that allows you to feel really positive. The tagline for my ministry for years, and sometimes I use it now, sometimes I don't, is I will support you to, establish a personal, palpable, positive relationship with God, or sometimes I say with Spirit. Because words matter to people, and sometimes God turns people off. And
Yes.
so I'm very aware of trying to meet them where they are at, get them in the door. Just get them in the door. Okay, let's see what this is about, you know?
It's an unfortunate kind of feature of religion in the current culture, and I think that something that you said, does it make you feel less than? And I think that that's how a lot of people grew up. I grew up as a Catholic, and it was really a fear-based
It is.
experience. My uncle, Thomas Keating, who you
Yes,
may be
I
aware
listened
of
to
him,
that. I listened to him, right?
that
I have his books.
that he really went in a different direction with, and was a Catholic monk until his death, but that he was much more on what you're talking about, and that God is present within us, and that God is the embodiment of love in us, and kind of the opposite of, I shouldn't do this because I'm going to get punished or go to damnation of one sort or another. So what I'm hearing from you is that your whole ministry has been tried to really bring that loving God into people's.
I want it to be awakened
lives.
within them. I want them to
Yeah.
know that it's possible. I want them to have faith in something greater than they are. To me,
Yes.
the people I know, including some relatives, they're all people I know in life, who really suffer, who may be unhappy, are people who don't have faith in something other than themselves. So what happens is they think they have to do this gig all by themselves, and they don't. You must see it over and over again. They don't have to do it by themselves. What was the book, Jesus, CEO, 20 years ago? I forget who wrote it. You probably have a copy. I have my little red copy. And it was all about how we have this great manager. Why don't we ask? Why don't we invite him in to help us? I've been blessed with so many, I've met him face to face. So I have been blessed with so many extraordinary, mystical experiences that I have no other way to live. So if I can bring that forward, which is what was the point of my book, if I can bring those experiences forward for others to maybe even plant a seed in them, because it's all so much greater than a God that people think is judging them or even has the ability to judge. And then we get into, well, is Jesus God? Is Jesus the only child? Is Jesus the only son of God? What happens to the rest of us? We get into this kind of, I don't want to say morbid, but they're saying the word morbid because what it does is it pushes you down. It doesn't allow you to live life fully. It allows you to always feel that you're less than when you're not. Someone said to me, how come people are healing when they come to you? And I said, because I know they can. Because I don't think they're broken. because they're experiencing energy that allows love to enter into their bodies, and they feel different. I had a young man who came to me. He was the husband of a newly married. I did their wedding, a female client who I'd known for years, and she married this guy, the average Joe. He's an average Joe. His name's Joe. He's a sweetheart. And Joe would come to me after she harassed him enough. And I always tell people, don't harass, just offer, give him the card, don't force, won't work. But Joe would come in. Joe gave me a quote once. He said, you know, Deborah, I don't know what you do, but I always feel better when I leave.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good enough. That's good. That's making a difference. And they may wonder why. What's the difference? And then
So-
they'll ask.
What you just expressed, how close is that to New Thought?
Well, what I learned from New Thought was that there's only one presence, and that presence is God. And that we are creating through our word, which now we would call our vibration, right? Now we would say that, and I believe this, that we create through our vibration because we're radio stations and we draw that to us. So if we're fearful about something, we're emotional beings. We're going to draw more fear. We're going to draw more things to be fearful about. If we're worried about something, we're giving that all our energy, and we're going to draw that to us. If we just love something, if we're so grateful for something, we're going to draw more to be grateful for. There's 5 unity principles, which I can't recite right now, but they all are true for me, and they all taught me so much about myself, which I think is what the path is all about. I think we're here to discover ourselves, and the joy of it is having a chance to show up for God, to see the divine in every single aspect of our lives, and how perfect it can be, even if it's painful. Even if it's painful. The angst I had about these 2 paragraphs, I will tell you, the day before, I had feng shuied my office, moved everything around and feng shuied it. I have a friend who's a designer who does feng shui. So I asked her about things, and she goes, okay, go through everything with me. I said, so, in the fame and reputation area, I don't want to put up my diplomas. I don't know why. They're beautiful, they're framed, they're in red, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to put them up on the wall. I don't know why. Well, where do you have them? Underneath the table. You can see them, but they're underneath the table. And I know from what I've guided other people to do, you need to hang those on the wall. You want to see them. But it was so uncomfortable for me that I didn't want to do it. Then the next day I have to write these paragraphs for Joel. And in writing it, I realized this is what I came to. And this is what I mean about something's a challenge. It doesn't feel good, but we get there when we have enough faith and courage to walk through it, because it was really uncomfortable for me. I don't ever like to put myself first. I don't want those up on the wall and it isn't enough. Writing you those 2 paragraphs wasn't enough, because it doesn't express my deep faith in God. And that's the number one most important thing to me. I left this morning, my husband goes, why don't you put on a spring dress? Why don't you get pretty? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? I went, sweetheart, I never do that. I might look good for a service, but it's not my intention to be in the front. I want my faith to be in the front.
Yeah. And let me just say, you don't have to do anything to look pretty. You look pretty.
Did you tell Bill that?
Okay.
No, he does think so. He did. But I was mimicking what he said. But what he said was he wanted me to get a little more dressed up. And I said, you know, I want God to be the dressing. I want faith to be what someone sees. You know, the rest of it just isn't important. It isn't important. Did I answer any question anyone asked me? I'm a typical minister. I can step on that soapbox, baby, and I can talk for hours. It's very easy to do.
Okay. Well, you're talking about your ministry, and even though you just said you don't like titles and
Yeah.
all that, Amethyst Light Ministry, the Church of Spiritual Empowerment.
Cozy.
So anything you want to say about
Cozy
either of
was
those?
so beautiful. It lasted for 1 year. And it was at a time when, and I don't have the actual years in me, but I started it when we lived in Amesbury, so it was probably around 20 years ago, in the warehouse area and in a friend's loft area. And then we grew to meeting in Newburyport at another healing center. And at the time, we had we had 60 or 70 people on the email list and 30 to 40 people every Sunday when churches were closing, when things were sizing down and people were angry about things and they were not wanting to go to a church. And two lessons from that. The first one was I had trouble getting volunteers. The one volunteer I had is, and if you're listening to this, I will say your name, Amy Jocelyn. She was an angel and a saint. And she is associated with Unity and now is a licensed Unity teacher. But Amy showed up for me for help, but I couldn't get anyone else. I just could not get anyone else to volunteer. And I asked a very good friend of mine who I had met through her coming to Cozy. And she's an artist, and she just looked, she goes, Deb, she said, you know how you go to a great restaurant and you get this perfect meal in front of you and you really enjoy it? You don't want to help fix it.
Or do the dishes.
Or do the dishes. You don't want to set up the chairs. You don't want to get the music. You don't want to help put it together. You just want to go, you want to get fed, and you want to leave and take it with you. And I'll never forget, Beth is her name, when she said that to me. So a year or so, and then I hear from Spirit, you're supposed to stop doing Cozy. And I went, wow, you move me around fast. There are people that come in every week. And no, you don't want to do Cozy. And at this time, I had a spiritual teacher who still resides in this area, but I'll keep her name private. And all of a sudden, she showed up at my door one day, knocked, and I opened the door and went, wow, hi. She goes, you're supposed to close the church. And I went, okay, that's enough for me. So I made the announcement the next Sunday at church, and the following Sunday, a whole group of people showed up. All my friends who didn't come to the church, I call my goddess circle, all these women showed up. And we did a big circle ceremony of, gratitude and releasing and letting go and blessing each other. And that was Cozy. But I also had a worldwide, what they called a worldwide web ministry, where there used to be some software called Dragon, I think, and you'd speak, and then you could put it on the airways. I could put it out on the airways, so you could listen to a whole sermon that way, or service or message. I did that for, who knows, I'll say another year. I have no sense of timing at all. Like, no sense of timing. It's gone. Timelines are not a present. And I had about 1,800 people a week who listened to that from 38 countries.
Wow.
So that was very wonderful. But I keep getting picked up, and moved around. I just go. I just trust it and go.
And Amethyst Light Ministry?
Why the name?
Or when did that come in? Or is
1997. Yes, I'm still the Amethyst Light Ministry. I still see clients. I retired at the beginning of the year and then I came back, so it's been a little confusing. I guess I was just supposed to take a break, but I thought I was retiring and I'm not. So Amethyst Light Ministry, it came about through the gallery, but it wasn't named until I rented a space. I came to Newburyport, we moved here, and I rented a space down at the traffic circle around there where the business park is. And I remember sitting down. At this time, Saint Germain was very prevalent in my life, and Saint Germain's usually in all purple and crown chakra and all those lovely things. And then I thought, well, we still had phone books. I want to be the first one listed. Hey, Amethyst. Okay, honestly, at the corner of State and Pleasant, that's when it happened. I'm sitting on a stone going, what's a good name? Amethyst Light Ministry. I like that. Saint Germain and the A in the phone book. It works for me. That's honestly how it happened. And yes, it still exists. And I still do sporadic clergy duties, when asked, usually from people who've known me a long time. But I certainly don't do them as much as I used to. When, sometimes I talk about 8808. I did 4 weddings in one weekend, when people wanted the date. So, but I have lovely memories of all the places I've been taken to do weddings, all the experiences that I've had doing them. You hold those close, don't you?
Yes.
You hold those and the memorials.
Yes.
And for most people of the clergy who I know, memorials and funerals are our favorite, actually, over weddings, because people are more vulnerable, they're more open, they're more loving because they're grieving, although they think it's pain, but it's love. And and I just think I think differently than everybody else, and I probably don't, but I think I do. So I want to get all that out as often as I can. That's why I have 2 Facebook pages, Amethyst Light Ministry, my personal page. I do videos all the time, and I just want to get all of it out. I had a big birthday a few weeks ago. I want to make sure I get it all out before I leave. Yeah, questions. I
have
love
some.
questions.
You mentioned with the Reiki the alternative views, one being God's energy coming
In and through and out our hands.
in
as
and out,
he-
out our hands, and the other being the energy
of God calling, the God within
the
you,
God within
calling the God within me.
Right, which is basically namaste.
It is namaste.
I honor the divine light in me, honors it. And that is the sort of, to my thinking, I guess, the sort of deeper spiritual path that stands almost in opposition to the sort of dogmatic religion that places God sort of up in the sky, away from us rather than within us.
Exactly.
Okay, so I was just
I agree
wanted
with
to
you.
check that out.
I agree with you. I think there's a mystical way to look at it, as your uncle did. I think
Yes.
there's a mystical way of being, and then there's a theological way of being. I've
Yes.
never taken a theological class in my life. I've read immensely, but I've never taken a class. I've only
Yes.
taken metaphysics. Call me a metaphysician. There's so many labels and names. But I absolutely believe that it's greater than anything that we find formally in religious training, because it has to be an experience. I remember someone saying in a class, a union class I was in, someone asked the teacher, how do you describe God? And she looked at them and said, well, how do you describe the smell of a rose? You have to have the experience of the scent of the rose before you can even know what that is, because it cannot be described. And I believe the same thing happens with the light of God, the awareness of God, the creator energy. It happens when someone lays on my table, which I don't do hands-on healing anymore. I want to make that clear, at least formally on a table. But when they lay on a table and they feel electricity going through their body, or I've had cancer patients who stop having nausea, and all of a sudden they feel. I've had a cancer patient who was healed, and we just met. I just met he and his
that's
wife
beautiful.
came to my home a couple of weeks ago to say hello, and it's 7 years clear. And yes, he did a couple of mainstream things also, but he came to me every single week, and he had amazing situations. And some of that has to do with the language, and you mentioned that earlier. Language can carry so much angst for people because we're brought up with certain words that carry a different energy.
Yes.
Someone said to me the other day, a student, we were talking about what was the big thing that just happened in the sky?
Oh, the eclipse?
Yeah, the eclipse. So someone just mentioned the eclipse, and a student said to me, she said, so the lessons that came through, Deborah, have been amazing. And I noted it on my Facebook page, and I said, dear one, I said, if you say awareness is, it doesn't feel as harsh. So we like to formally say, you have lessons to learn. How does that feel? That makes you feel like you don't know enough. It makes you feel like you're less than. It doesn't make you feel very good about yourself. But if you say, wow, you had that awareness, how wonderful. You feel greater, you feel bigger, your energy is expanded in that. So I find language to be very important.
Yes. That's so powerful.
Isn't
it
it?
takes me back to 1970s sometimes. I saw R.D. Lang speak at the church down off the Common in Boston. And the thing that really stood out for me was that he said, he was talking about language. And he said, well, here's an example. We have a word, paranoia, that describes people who believe that they're persecuted, but they aren't. We don't have a word for describing the people who are being persecuted but don't realize it. And that really just framed it for me, and how that can actually shape people's experience.
And the words we speak over each other shape us. I remember one that's as stayed in my mind was years ago. I went to this chiropractor who I loved. We had a great relationship, and but I said to him one time, I had something up here. He goes, I was in my 40s at the time, and he goes, oh, it's probably just a little arthritis. I have never forgotten that he spoke those words over me, and I've had to diss them. I've had to say no to them. You do not get to sink into my body. I refuse that. And I have the power within me to do so.
And years ago, I took a weekend Silva mind control.
Oh, yeah, it's similar. It's very, very, very similar.
One of the few things that I remember from that weekend is when you have a thought that is disturbing to you or you don't want to have happen, just say cancel, cancel.
Okay, well, there's a
Erasing the
woman,
board.
she does that all the time. She does cancel, cancel. But it's so, even Unity, sometimes people say, yeah, it's about training your mind, not mind control, but it's about retraining your mind. Because you think of everything we're taught, everything we hear in our lives as children, even when we're in the womb, we hear the conversations, the TV, the news, the media. We're being groomed, right? And we think of how we can shift that and change that. They want me to share something with you, is that I have this concept that we have, what I would call spiritual illnesses. And the largest spiritual illness I ever see when I have an adult come to me is that I can tell right away they grew up in a home that had addiction and where the addict was put first. So what happened? They learned they had no choice. And it's huge for them to learn that they have a choice. Well, I can't think that way because I was told this. I can't think of myself because I was taught to always put them first. I can't speak up because we had to walk on eggshells or daddy would do this. It's all spiritual. It all is. The other thing, do I have time to say one more thing? I know you're looking at the clock like good management. Is that, oh, now I forgot what it was. There it goes, out the window.
Spiritual.
Okay, I'll think of it. Yeah, I'll think of it. It'll come back. It'll step back in. You know about that, right? It'll step back in.
Pop-up thinking.
Pop-up thinking. Oh, I like that. Pop-up thinking. Yeah, okay. Why'd I come in this room? I don't know. I'll remember later. Okay, I'll go over here.
Yes. So you're right, we are wrapping up time-wise. Anything before I ask the final question?
No, you could go ahead, Joel.
Yeah, nothing, okay. So as I shared earlier, that we end with asking anything you'd like to say for our listeners, encouragement, advice on lifting their spirit.
Well, first off, do I dare tread here? I love what you're doing, but I don't think the spirit needs lifting. I think that it already is of its highest caliber because it is what I call the I am, the true identity of who we are, that this spirit lives within us. We are light beings that lives within this human costume. It's our humanness that needs to be lifted. It's our humanness that needs to recognize the divinity of our true selves. So with that, I'll give you an example. I had a long-term student client for many years who came to see me one day. And she sits directly across from me and she starts crying. I haven't said a word yet. And she goes, "No, I haven't been meditating." So what I always ask of my long-term students, if they're really serious, is you have to make time for God every morning before you start your day. I don't care if you have to get up at 4 o'clock. I get up at 2, 3, or 4. I don't care. It doesn't matter. If you want to delve into this path, you need to sit quietly and have a personal relationship with God, the goddess, Jesus, creator. I don't care who you call it. The Buddha, Muji, Amma, it's all one. Call it anything you want, as long as you sit every day quietly, undisturbed. No, that doesn't mean you get to listen to something on your phone. It means your phone is out in the other room and turned off. It means no one's going to disturb you. It means that you're showing up for God. So this godliness that you want so much can show up through you. You have to make time for it. You have to. Or else you'll be on your knees one day crying for it. And you can go through surrender that way if you need to. There's no right or wrong way. That's just the way I ask my students to do it. You can do it any way you want. You want to be an addict? You need to fall on your knees? You need to almost die? That's okay, honey. You can do it that way. But there's an easier way. Find time every day. Give God your attention. Sit and breathe. Just listen to your breath. There's nothing more powerful. And I have taught meditation through the years. There's nothing more powerful than listening to your breath coming in and going through. Coming in and going through. Just do that. Have a little white noise if you want. Just do that and watch where you go. I did at the senior center in Townsend after a couple of years of living there once a week. I tell you, it was so amazing for them. It was so beautiful to watch what would happen during those 15 minutes or so. That they were just guided with my voice. Just, it's okay, you're safe, just breathe in, breathe out, watch it. As you think about it, think breath in, breath through. Don't say breath out. I say don't say breath out because that means it's gone. So breath in, breath through, breath in, breath through. Just keep repeating it in the silence of your mind. That's it. That's good. Just keep doing that. You're safe. Just listen to my voice. And these lovely, lovely people, would have the most amazing experiences. Except for one day I went over to touch someone, to give her a hug, and I got electrically zapped from her pacemaker. I was such a high kite. I got thrown across the room. So here's like 6 elders all looking at me, wondering what happened, and I had to catch myself. And then the woman, Helen, who it happened to, went, "Oh, my pacemaker rocked. What happened?" So I've learned not to touch anyone with a pacemaker or any mechanical help in the heart center. I'll do it from afar. Meditation, spending time with God each day. I don't, for me, there's no other way. Bring it into your daily
advice.
life. Bring it into your daily life.
100%.
But bring it into your daily life,
Absolutely.
too. Just don't think it's when you go to Insight Meditation Centers to meditate.
It's making it a way of life.
It's making it a way of life, but it's your way of life all the time. It's knowing it's accessible.
Yes.
Yeah,
Someone once described that as the off-duty light never goes on.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, it doesn't. I got so many voices in my head. I'm so glad I'm alive these days, because if I was alive 100 years ago, I probably wouldn't be here. I know I wasn't here in the 1600s.
So thank you so much, Deborah,
Thank you.
for sharing
It's
your
lovely.
wisdom, your experience.
Thank you.
And we hope you enjoyed your time with Deborah, and join us next month for another special guest.
Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you.
Truly
Thank you
a pleasure.
both so much. Nothing I love more than to have nice, deep conversations about spirit.
Yes.
Thank you.